Godzilla Kong the New Empire hits this month, and BBTS is going to have a ton of stuff you can pick up. Check it out at the link in the description.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey there, collectors, what's going on? It's going to be Steven here, and welcome to another Hiya Toys review, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Hiya Exquisite Basic. I mean, with as many reviews as I've done of their line, you'd think I'd have that title narrowed down now. But anyway, it is going to be of the Heat Ray, the Atomic Blast Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Kong. It's going to be the translucent version, or the Jolly Rancher version. So it is a clear version of a figure some of us have probably already picked up, and when this one was revealed, despite it being announced at, or actually shown off more so, at San Diego Comic-Con in 2023, a lot of folks were upset because they released a new version, announced a new version for pre-order after the previous painted one already got in the hands of some folks. But with this one now on the market, is this one going to be just simply translucent blue dorsal plates and nothing else, or is there a bit more under the hood that is going to make this figure worth the purchase? For this review, we are absolutely going to take a very close look with some macro photography, a nice look at the accessories, and take a look to see whether or not he's going to be worth adding into your collection. Like many, when I first saw pictures of this hit and even the promo shots, I really thought it was just going to be translucent blue dorsal plates with a little bit of frosted base. Not tips, frosted bases around here. Blue mouth, blue eyes, and that was kind of it. But having this one in hand, I must say, I actually prefer this one in more areas than not than the original Heat Ray, Atomic Blast, whatever, Monsterverse, Doe Goji, whatever you want to call it, Godzilla that they released. Because there's a lot going on here that I can really appreciate and I like more. Admittedly, the dorsal plate look, one may say, is a little chaotic for me. Yes, they had to go with the translucent plastic in order to get this look, so pretty much at the point where the paint stops, I'm going to talk about that a bit more, what that means. It's pretty much nothing but that translucent blue plastic, which I'm not entirely a fan of. I think like some of the SH Monster Arts releases have done it a bit better, but considering this is Hiya's first attempt at this, it's a pretty solid jab. Okay, I gave you my final thoughts. But for this figure, I think overall they did a really standout job. So, as you're going to see, pretty much the entirety of the figure is made of translucent plastic. It's going to be made of a clear blue plastic, except for, I think, the heads. Oh, what? No, all of it. Yeah. And that paint application is basically going to stop where the translucent blue comes in for the dorsal plates. Now, it's not just going to be a dark gray. It's not just going to be a black like some have noted. No. It's actually going to have that gray base like you would expect for Godzilla. However, if you're familiar with the normal 2019 figure, you'll know that there's sort of like that armor-ish brown tan that is used for the wash that is found underneath the folds, the armor plating for this Godzilla, which looks really, really nice. And I think it is dialed in just correctly here, but there's a very subtle blue dry brushing that is found all over the figure, and it looks simply awesome. You're not really able to appreciate that unless you're holding this figure in hand, or I suppose, with my product photography, you love to see it. I really have to say there isn't much else for this figure I can talk about unless I'm stalling for time. The dorsal plates look great. No real issues here, except for what I will say is, I think Hiya had an opportunity to get the gills, if you will, to have the atomic effect as well, and they did not, which is a bit of a bummer. Now, of course, I said that this has some translucent plastic that lights up, so let's go ahead and do just a quick look at that. I used my phone light here just to make things real simple, because I think for the average person, this is going to be the extent of their experience with this. So here's what it's going to look like if it is backlit. You will note that the tip of the tail, the last few segments, that is not going to be translucent plastic, it seems. It's just going to be blue paint, which kind of matches up with the translucent blue. but generally speaking, this is what he is going to look like. Now, if you do light this thing up from the inside, it is going to look significantly more translucent, but the average collector I don't think is going to be doing that. We will go over the articulation pretty quickly since this is going to be a repaint, recasted, whatever you want to call it, of the 2019, which was repainted into the Godzilla vs. Kong redo, which was Burning Godzilla, which was the original Heat Ray Godzilla, which will also be used for the RRE evolved Godzilla from Godzilla Kong the New Empire. You get the point. So we do have the jaw opens and closes on a hinge. We have the tongue, which does move as well on a hinge. Then I'm going to go ahead and pop the head off so this way you can see. We do have these neck sleeves, which cover up this long double axis barbell style ball joint, which this will be a point that I will note at the end. So yes, ball jointed neck, so he can look up about that far, look down about that far, look left, look right, all that good stuff, twist and turn. Shoulders are going to be ball joints like that, move side to side, all the good stuff. Single hinge elbows, which bend down about that far. You can bend up about that far, and we do have swivels there. We do have ball jointed wrists, so we can move the hands around. Okay, very good, very neat. Ball joints in the waist, I guess you may call that, where he can twist and turn and do the spin, all good. And we can actually get some good movement down and some movement back and rock from side to side, which is nice. Ball jointed hips. Cool. You see how far side to side. We do have effectively hinged knees. They do pop in on ball joints. I've popped these out before. So there you go. Ball jointed ankles. Nice. They twist and turn around. And then we have a nice long ball jointed tail, which this has actually not popped off on me yet, which is good. But I race through that to get to the moral of the story here. You see that there is a nice ease of fluidity of movement from this figure. This figure is actually made of a really soft material. It's made of a very, very soft plastic, which is basically a W here for this figure. So pretty much you can push this thing for range of movement. This Godzilla is basically very, very user-friendly, and you can swap off the parts with no issue. So when you're swapping off the heads, so this way you can have him with the atomic blast head, so this way you can pop in the beam, it's not going to be an issue. I didn't even have to use a hairdryer, period, end of discussion, and I don't imagine anyone would have to because of just how nice and pliable, how malleable this thing is. And with that being said, we can really crank the angle of that hinge at the elbow. Like you see that? That's nearly 90 degrees, right? That's really, really cool. The other Godzillas really can't reach that. So that's the point here. The articulation is all the same, but the softer material really helps to push the degree of the range of movement just a little bit more, which is great. For accessories, it's pretty much going to be a redo of the original Heat Ray release, where we're going to have one head sculpt that is going to have the mouth that is in a fixed open position without the tongue where the beam is going to fit in. And then we are also going to have an alternate neck attachment piece that allows Godzilla to look up. The original release is very stiff. It is made of a harder plastic, whereas I made mention in the articulation section here, this is made of a softer plastic, which is good for many things, like, for an example, swapping out parts. Not hard to do. However, it's not great because stuff likes to pop off with ease. So don't be surprised if, as you're swapping parts, because you're not really going to need a blow dryer here, at least in my experience, even if you kind of know what you're doing, yeah, stuff likes to sag. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, for the atomic breath here, it is actually seemingly more in line with the original atomic blast release because it has a lot of paint on it, whereas the original release is pretty much just translucent blue plastic. So that is an interesting thing to see there. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. It's the same thing as the original release, just a bit different paint. Now, of course, We got to do a side-by-side comparison, but we're going to take a look at that after a very quick size comparison, because how many more times do you need to see this sculpt next to other figures you just might have? It's the same thing. Yeah, it's just in a different color. There you go. All right, side-by-side comparison with the original Atomic Breath, Atomic Blast, Heat Ray, whatever you want to call it. Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Kong 2019, Godzilla Kong the New Empire, whatever. Here you go. And you can definitely see there are going to be some differences here. And what I will note is we did have some conversations up in my Discord server that the paint may not match, and it would look very, very bad if you happened to do head swaps for this guy and the other guy. You swap between the two. What I will say, yes, that is correct. However, it is so minimal, it pretty much doesn't matter. So I will say, if you are looking to swap the heads, not the neck part, but the heads, it actually doesn't look too bad, and I really prefer this more. So if you were thinking about doing that, the Godzilla's your oyster, that's a weird way to put it. Which one is better? Honestly, Coke or Pepsi. It's going to be your choice. Buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. I really like the look of this thing. I think that the subtle paint applications, which are not very apparent because the translucent blue dorsal plates are basically going to be the eye catcher and are very bright compared to the darker paint of the main body. I think the paint application is really cool, though I do think that the translucent blue, which does bleed over from the dorsal plate range, I wish that could be a little bit more in control, but for their first translucent figure, for their first real true variant, one may say, I think Hiya did a really solid job. Though the articulation is the same, there's nothing really changed with the joints. They did change up the material that this figure is made from, or made of, whatever you would prefer, and it does feature some softer plastic, so it does have an easier time to move around. So the joint range is much better. That being said, the accessories are the same and it's easier to swap the head parts, but I do have some instances where the head does like to pop off under the weight of the beam. Same price as all of the other Hiya Godzillas, so if you are looking to pick this up, you will have to pay the entry fee again to get this, but keep in mind that will more than likely fund other figures. Is it better than the first Heat Ray release? Not necessarily. Like I just got done saying, it's Coke versus Pepsi. This is a great release. I like it. Thumbs up.